If you're watching this, chances are you already know what it feels like to hear a ZZ Top song come on the radio and instantly get transported somewhere else. Maybe it's a summer night, maybe it's a long drive, maybe it's the smell of a garage, a diner, or a dusty Texas highway you've never been on, but somehow it still feels like yours. Today, we're going back to 1990. We're going back to an album that doesn't always get the headlines of Eliminator or Afterburner, like these ones right here. These are the big ones from the 80s. But for a lot of us, it hits us deep. And I'm talking about the one after that, which is Recycler. Released on October 16th, 1990. Recycler was ZZ Top doing something interesting, something that took guts. They were stepping back, pulling away from some of the gloss and glitter of the 80s. And in doing so, they reminded us why we fell in love with them in the first place. So grab a seat, maybe crack open something cold, and let's take a ride back to 1990. To really understand what Recycler meant, you've got to understand where ZZ Top had just come from. The mid-80s were something else. We had Eliminator in 1983, and we had this one, Afterburner, in 1985. Those albums were massive. I mean, world-conquering massive. MTV was eating them alive in the best way. Little red coupe legs, fur-covered guitars, spinning hubcaps. ZZ Top had cracked a code that almost nobody else figured out: how to take the heart of Texas blues rock and dress it up in synthesizers and drum machines and still make it feel like something raw and real. But by the late 80s, musical landscape was shifting, hair metal was peaking and starting to crack, alternative was building underneath the surface, and there was a real question in the air: where do a band like ZZ Top go from here? Afterburner was big, commercial, polished to a mere sheen. Songs like Sleeping Bag and Stages had that certain sheen to them. You could hear the production budget in every note, and for lots of fans, especially for those of us who grew up on the oldies like these albums, Tres Hombres and Fandango, there was a quiet hope. Would they ever come back to something a little grittier? I mean, a little more classic ZZ Top. And then Recycler came out, and the answer was yes and no and something in between. Because what ZZ Top did on Recycler wasn't a complete 180. They didn't throw out the synthesizers entirely. They didn't suddenly record everything in a barn with one microphone. But what they did do, and this is key, was strip back some of the excess. They let the guitars breathe again, and they let the blues back in the room. Let's talk about Recycler and what it actually sounds like, because if you haven't sat down with this album start to finish recently or ever, you're in for something. The album opens with Concrete and Steel. And right from the jump, you get a sense that something has changed. There's a groove there, a low, rolling, almost hypnotic groove, but it's leaner than Afterburner. There's space in the mix. You can feel the pocket. And then you got tracks like 2000 Blues, which is, let's be honest, one of the most underrated songs in the entire ZZ Top catalog. It's slow, it's mournful in that gorgeous blues way. Billy's guitar just aches on the track. If Afterburner was a sports car doing 90 on a neon-lit highway, 2000 Blues is a back porch at midnight. Doubleback is probably the most well-known track off the album, and we'll get to that or why in a minute, but even that song has kind of a directness to it that felt fresh in 1990. It's straightforward, driving rock song, no gimmicks, just the band doing what they do. Burger Man is fun, a little tongue-in-cheek, classic ZZ Top wordplay. Give It Up shows them at their tightest, most rhythmically locked in. But here's the thing about the overall sonic texture of Recycler. It occupies this really interesting space between the slick, radio-ready production of the 80s and the return to something more organic. Engineer Terry Manning worked with the band on this, and what they landed on was a sound that felt like it had both feet in the present. This is still very much a 1990 record. But one ear cocked back toward Texas, towards the blues, towards the swamp and the dirt that made ZZ Top who they are. The synthesizers are still there, technology is still there, But it's in service of the song now rather than the other way around, and that makes all the difference. Now let's talk about one of the most delightful pop culture moments in the entire ZZ Top story, because when Back to the Future Part 3 came out in the summer of 1990, ZZ Top was in it, and I mean actually in it. If you saw that movie in theaters, and if you're someone around my age, there's probably a chance you did, you probably remember this. The DeLorean lands in 1885. Doc Brown is his Old West, and there's ZZ Top playing at the Hill Valley Festival in the Old West. They had the giant beards and the matching suits, and I say this with complete sincerity, one of the greatest things that has ever happened in cinema. But beyond just a cameo, the band contributed Doubleback to the film's soundtrack, and that song, that tight, driving, no-nonsense rock track, became the calling card for the album. It got serious radio play, it charted, it introduced a new generation of younger fans to the band, while giving longtime fans something good to feel about. There's something almost poetic about it, right? ZZ Top, a band built on American mythology, on Texas heat and Route 66, in the deep American South, showing up in a movie about time travel to the American West. Of all the bands in the world to show up in the Hill Valley of 1885, ZZ Top might actually make the most sense. And think about what that moment did for Recycler. The album came out in October of 1990. Back to the Future Part 3 had been in theaters since May. So by the time Recycler dropped, there were already millions of people, kids, teenagers, adults, who had that image in their heads, ZZ Top in the Old West, playing rock and roll, and then they heard Doubleback on the radio, and it all clicked. That collaboration was perfectly timed, and in a lot of ways, reflected what Recycler itself was about. This sense of roots, going back, finding something that was always there underneath. Now, we get to the heart of it. If you want to understand what Recycler was really about, what it was reaching for, you only need to listen to one song, My Head's in Mississippi. That song is something else, something special from the moment it starts, that dirty, swampy, absolutely filthy guitar riff. You know you're not in Afterburner territory anymore. This is not a music video song, this is a song engineered to get heavy MTV rotation. This is ZZ Top going back to the well, going back to where they came from. Billy Gibbons has talked over the years about the deep influence of Delta blues on his playing, about Muddy Waters, about Howlin' Wolf, about the raw, unvarnished power of the music that came out of Mississippi and Louisiana. And My Head's in Mississippi is like a direct love letter to all of that. The lyrics paint a picture of a man spiritually rooted in the South. His body might be anywhere, on tour, in the studio, in the modern world, but his soul's down in Mississippi. And there's really something in that sentiment that really resonates. For those of us who grew up with this music, ZZ Top was always a portal to something older, something deeper, something that felt ancient and alive at the same time. When I hear that song, I don't think about 1990. I think about something timeless. I think about a front porch. I think about heat lightning over a flat Texas horizon. I think about the sound the guitar makes when someone has truly lived something. And that's the thing about My Head's in Mississippi. As it relates to the whole album, it's the purest expression of what Recycler was doing. Every other song on the record is sort of finding its way back, but this one has arrived. This was ZZ Top remembering who they were before the videos, before the synthesizers, before the mainstream crossover. This was the band that played Fandango in 1975, the band that recorded La Grange and Tush, and it came up out of Houston, playing all that kind of music that demands something you feel in your chest, not just nod your head to it. So where does Recycler sit in the ZZ Top story? How does it hold up? I think it's over like 35 years now, and I think it holds up beautifully. I think it holds up precisely because of what it's trying to do, and largely succeeded at doing. In the world of rock music in 1990, a lot of bands were getting lost. Some were chasing trends, some were doubling down on excess, some were just fading, but ZZ Top made a record that looked inward, that honored where they came from, that said quietly but firmly, this is who we are. For those of us in our 40s, 50s, or 60s today, the generation that grew up with a band, Recycler represents a particular kind of memory. It's the album that came out when we were in our late teens or early 20s. Maybe you bought it on cassette. Maybe you bought it on CD. Maybe you heard Doubleback on a radio station during a road trip and cranked the volume. And now, decades later, when you put it on, or you even just think about it, it takes you somewhere. That's what good music does. It doesn't just play in your ears, it plays in your memory, in your body, in a version of yourself you don't visit as often as you like. ZZ Top lost Dusty Hill in 2021, and that changed things. The band that made Recycler, Billy and Dusty and Frank, is a band frozen in time right now, in a way. And when you listen to that album today, you're not just hearing music, you're hearing a man, Dusty Hill, playing bass lines that are gone from the world right now. You're hearing a specific moment in time with three specific human beings doing something they've spent their whole lives learning to do, and that deserves to be honored. Recycler isn't ZZ Top's biggest album, it isn't their most celebrated, but it might be their most human. It's an album about returning to something real, and right now, in whatever year you're watching this, it feels like exactly the right message. So that's Recycler, an album about memory, about roots, about the blues that never really leaves you, no matter how far home you get. So if you haven't listened to it in a while, or you've never given it a proper front-to-back stick, I want you to do that this week. Put it on, not as background music. Actually listen to it. Start with track number 1, Concrete and Steel, and let it take you through, and then make sure you get to My Head's in Mississippi, which is track number 5 on my disc. And you'll be glad you did. So if you're a longtime fan of this channel, thank you. And if you're new here, welcome. We do this for the love of music, for the memories, for the bands, the albums that shaped who we are. And check out this playlist of more ZZ Top reviews that should be appearing on your screen right now. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you were when Recycler came out. Tell me your favorite track. Tell me what ZZ Top means to you. I read every single one of those comments, and I reply to them all. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. There's a lot more where this came from. Until next time, stay sharp, stay real, and keep the music close.